The first thing Claire Bennett noticed was not the expensive flowers, the crystal glasses, or the name of the person who made the reservation. It was the fact that her own husband had booked the most important table in her restaurant without telling her. For a woman who built her entire world around details, that one missing conversation felt strangely heavy. Claire stood in the quiet dining room of Bennett House, running her fingers across the polished wooden bar she had chosen herself 7 years earlier. Every corner of the restaurant carried a piece of her life. The hand-painted wall behind the entrance came from a local artist she had discovered before anyone knew her name. The menu had been rewritten dozens of times until every dish felt like something she could proudly call her own. This place was more than a business. It was proof that all the late nights, the risks, and the moments when she wondered if she had made the wrong choice had meant something. "You're still here?" her husband Daniel asked from the doorway, pulling her out of her thoughts. Claire turned and smiled. "Someone has to make sure everything is perfect." Daniel laughed softly as he walked inside, looking around the room like a proud owner showing off a valuable possession. "That's what I love about you. You always care about the little things." Years ago, those words would have made her feel appreciated. Daniel had been the person who believed in her when she was just a young chef with a notebook full of ideas and no investors willing to listen. He had celebrated the first night Bennett House opened. He had stood beside her when only 12 customers showed up. He had told her one day people would wait months just to get a table. For a long time, Claire believed they were building something together. But lately, something had changed. Daniel was busier, more distracted. He answered messages during dinner and seemed miles away even when he was sitting right beside her. Claire noticed those things, but she kept telling herself that every marriage went through difficult seasons. She had spent years building this restaurant. She knew better than anyone that good things required patience. That evening, while reviewing the weekend reservations, Claire saw a VIP booking appear on the schedule. A private dinner. 8 o'clock. The entire back room reserved. Special request, champagne service, custom flowers, and a personalized menu. She smiled for a moment, assuming Daniel had finally planned something thoughtful for their anniversary. Then she saw the name attached to the reservation. Daniel Bennett. Not Claire and Daniel. Just Daniel. She stared at the screen a little longer than she expected. It was a small detail, something most people would have ignored. But Claire knew her husband, and she knew her restaurant. When a man who always told her he hated surprises suddenly created one inside the place she built, there was only one question she could not answer. Why had Daniel booked her restaurant for a private dinner and never mentioned it to her? Claire stayed in the office long after Daniel left that night. She told herself she was only finishing paperwork, but she knew that was not the real reason. She was waiting for a feeling she could not explain. Maybe Daniel would come back and tell her he had planned something special. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe she had been reading too much into a single reservation. That was what people did when they cared about someone. They looked for reasons to trust them. She opened the reservation details again, hoping she had missed something. The screen showed the same information. 8 o'clock. Private dining room. Special arrangements. Daniel Bennett as the person who made the booking. Claire leaned back in her chair and looked around her office. On the wall was a framed photo from the first night Bennett House opened. She and Daniel were standing outside the restaurant, both exhausted, both smiling. They had no idea what the next few years would bring. "We did it," Daniel had told her that night. "You did it," she had corrected him. Back then, he had smiled and said, "No, Claire, we did." Those words stayed with her because lately, she was starting to wonder if Daniel still believed them. The next morning, Claire arrived before sunrise like she always did. The kitchen was already coming alive. The smell of fresh bread filled the room. The staff moved quickly, preparing for another busy weekend. To everyone else, it was just another successful restaurant preparing for another successful night. But Claire felt different. She was quieter than usual. "Everything okay?" her manager, Olivia, asked while checking the inventory list. Claire looked up. "Why would you ask that?" Olivia hesitated. "Because you have been staring at the same order sheet for 5 minutes. Claire forced a small smile. "Just tired." Olivia knew Claire too well to believe that answer, but she did not push. Around noon, Daniel called. Claire looked at her phone for several seconds before answering. "Hey," she said. "Hey, are you busy?" Daniel asked. His voice sounded casual, almost too casual. "I am at the restaurant." "Right. Of course you are." There was a pause. "Listen, I need you to make sure everything is perfect tonight." Claire's fingers tightened around the phone. Tonight. Yes. For the dinner reservation. She waited for him to explain. He did not. Daniel, who is the dinner for? Another pause. Short, but long enough. It is just a business thing. Claire looked through the glass window of her office toward the dining room. The same room where couples celebrated anniversaries. The same room where families shared milestones. The same room where she had spent years creating memories for other people. A business thing with a private menu and flowers? She asked. Daniel's tone changed slightly. Claire, do we really need to make everything complicated? The words were quiet, but they landed harder than she expected. Not because he was angry, because he sounded annoyed that she had questions. I am not making anything complicated, Claire replied. I am asking why my husband booked my restaurant and did not tell me. Silence filled the call. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel finally said, I have to go. We will talk later. The call ended. Claire stayed still, holding the phone in her hand. She had spent years learning every detail about running a restaurant. Every ingredient. Every customer preference. Every small thing that could ruin a perfect evening. But now there was one detail about her own life that she could not understand. And that bothered her more than anything else. Because for the first time in a long time, Claire was not wondering what Daniel was doing. She was wondering what he had stopped telling her. Claire did not sleep much that night. Not because she was certain something was wrong, but because she was trying to convince herself that nothing was. There was a difference between knowing and fearing. Claire had built her life on facts, not assumptions. She trusted numbers, schedules, and details. She trusted what she could see. But lately, Daniel had become a question she could not solve. The next evening, Bennett House was prepared for the private dinner. The back room looked exactly the way Daniel had requested. Soft lighting, fresh flowers, a carefully selected menu. Every detail was arranged perfectly. Claire walked through the room one last time, checking everything herself. Her staff noticed her silence, but nobody asked questions. They knew Claire was the kind of person who carried pressure quietly. She never wanted her personal problems to affect the people who worked beside her. Around 7:30, Olivia approached her with a tablet in hand. Claire, the guests for the private room have arrived. Claire looked up. Already? Yes. The woman came in first. She asked if the table was ready. Something about the way Olivia said it made Claire pause. The woman. Olivia nodded. She said the reservation was under Daniel Bennett. Claire felt a strange heaviness settle in her chest. She had spent the entire day hoping there was another explanation. Maybe Daniel had planned a business dinner. Maybe he had forgotten to mention a client. Maybe there was some harmless reason behind everything. But now, hearing that someone else had arrived expecting a private evening connected to her husband, those possibilities started disappearing one by one. What did she look like? Claire asked. Olivia looked uncomfortable. Young. Very confident. She seemed like she belonged here. That sentence stayed with Claire. She seemed like she belonged here. Claire looked around the room. She thought about every morning she had arrived before everyone else. Every night she had stayed after the last guest left. Every difficult month when she wondered if the restaurant would survive. She thought about how many people walked into this room and saw elegance, without ever knowing the work hidden behind it. Then Daniel walked through the entrance. He was wearing the navy suit she had helped him choose last year for an important business event. For a second, Claire almost smiled. That was the strange thing about love. Even when something felt wrong, a small part of you still remembered all the reasons you cared. Daniel spotted her and immediately looked surprised. Claire, what are you doing here? She stared at him. What am I doing here? Her voice was calm, but her expression had changed. Daniel, this is my restaurant. He gave a small laugh, like he thought she was joking. I know. I just did not expect you to be involved tonight. Involved in what? She asked. Daniel looked away for a moment. That tiny movement told Claire more than any answer could have. It is complicated, he said. Claire shook her head slowly. No, it is actually very simple. You booked this place. You created a private dinner. You never told me. Daniel lowered his voice. Can we not do this here? Claire looked toward the private room where someone was waiting for him. She did not raise her voice. She did not create a scene. She simply stood there, realizing that the problem was no longer the reservation. The problem was that Daniel had brought a secret into the one place where she had always felt in control. And for the first time, Claire had to decide whether she wanted answers before that dinner began, or whether she needed to see the truth unfold on its own. Claire watched Daniel stand there in the middle of her restaurant, trying to look calm, while everything about his body language told a different story. He kept glancing toward the private dining room, toward the person waiting inside, toward the secret he had brought into a place where he thought no one would question him. "Claire," Daniel said quietly, "please do not make this a bigger situation than it needs to be." She looked at him for a moment. "A bigger situation?" Her voice stayed steady. "Daniel, you arranged a private dinner here and hid it from me. I am not making anything bigger. I am asking a simple question." He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "It is not what you think." Claire almost smiled at that sentence. It was the kind of sentence people used when they wanted time before explaining the truth. "Then tell me what it is," she replied. "Right now." Daniel looked around the restaurant. His eyes moved over the elegant tables, the flowers, the staff quietly preparing for the evening. "Can we talk somewhere else?" Claire noticed something in that moment. Daniel was not worried about hurting her feelings. He was worried about being seen. That realization changed something inside her. Not a dramatic explosion, not anger, something quieter, something heavier. "You were comfortable using this place for whatever you planned," she said. "But now you do not want to have the conversation here." Daniel's expression tightened. "You are misunderstanding." Before Claire could respond, the woman from the private room stepped into the hallway. She looked around with confidence, as if she already knew the restaurant belonged to her evening. "Daniel," she called. Her voice was soft, but the timing said everything. Claire turned toward her. The woman stopped when she saw them together. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. Daniel quickly stepped forward. "I thought you were going to wait inside." The woman looked at Claire, then back at Daniel. "I did not realize she would be here." That sentence was enough. Claire did not need a dramatic confession. She did not need someone to spell out what was happening. Sometimes the truth arrived in the smallest details. The way someone avoided eye contact. The way a husband became a stranger in front of another person. The way a room suddenly felt different. Claire took a slow breath and looked at Daniel. "Who is she?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no answer came immediately. The hesitation was louder than words. "Claire," he finally said, "this is Vanessa." Vanessa gave a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "I have heard a lot about you." Claire looked at her. "Have you?" The question hung in the air. Daniel immediately interrupted. "This is not the place." Claire turned toward him. "You are right. This is not the place." She looked around the restaurant she had built, the place where people came to celebrate love, trust, and important moments. Then she looked back at the man who had brought something completely different into it. Daniel lowered his voice. "I just wanted one evening without complications." Claire felt something shift. Not because she finally understood what was happening. She already did. The shift came because she realized Daniel had made a choice long before tonight. He had chosen secrecy. He had chosen disrespect. And now he was standing in front of her, expecting her to make things easier for him. Claire walked toward the reservation desk without another word. Olivia noticed her expression and immediately stepped closer. "Claire," she asked. Claire looked at the booking screen one more time. Then she placed her hand on the mouse and made a decision. "Cancel the reservation," she said. Olivia froze. "The entire private dinner?" Claire nodded. "Yes." She looked toward the room where Daniel and Vanessa were waiting. "They are not dining here tonight." For the first time that evening, Claire felt completely certain about one thing. She did not need to know every detail before protecting what was hers. But as the cancellation went through, one question remained. How would Daniel react when he realized the one person he underestimated was the person who had the final say? The cancellation was simple. Just a few clicks. A few seconds. But to Daniel, it felt like the entire evening had been taken away from him. He stood near the entrance of Bennett House, watching one of the servers quietly remove the special arrangements from the private dining room. The flowers disappeared. The reserved signs were taken down. The table that had been prepared for his perfect evening was suddenly just another empty table. "What happened?" Vanessa asked, looking confused. "Why are they clearing everything?" Daniel looked toward the front desk, where Claire was reviewing the reservation details with Olivia. His face tightened. "I will handle it." He walked over quickly. "Claire, what are you doing?" Claire did not look surprised to see him. "I canceled the reservation." Daniel lowered his voice. "You cannot just do that." Claire finally looked up. "Actually, I can." That answer stopped him for a moment. Not because it was complicated, because it was true. Daniel was used to making decisions. He was used to meetings where people waited for his approval. He was used to walking into rooms and feeling like he controlled what happened next. But Bennett House was different. This was the one place where his name did not carry the most weight. "Claire," he said, trying to sound reasonable, "you are letting your emotions affect your judgment." She stared at him. "My emotions?" Daniel paused. "Yes, you are upset, and I understand that. But this was not the way to handle it." Claire looked around the restaurant. The staff was pretending not to listen, but everyone knew something serious was happening. She lowered her voice. "You booked my restaurant for a private evening with someone else and expected me to act like that was normal." Daniel's expression changed slightly. "Do not say it like that." "Like what?" Claire asked. "Like the truth." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Vanessa remained a few feet away, watching. She looked uncomfortable now. The confidence she had when she first entered the restaurant was fading. Daniel noticed and immediately shifted his tone. "Claire, this is between us. We can talk later." Claire shook her head. "That is the problem, Daniel. You always want to talk later. After the decision is already made. After everything is already arranged." The words were calm, but they carried years of frustration she had never expressed. Daniel looked away. "I never meant to hurt you." Claire nodded slowly. "Maybe you did not plan the hurt, but you planned everything else." That sentence stayed between them. Daniel had no immediate answer. He looked toward the private dining room again, almost as if he was still hoping the evening could somehow continue. But it was already gone. "I need you to understand something," Daniel said. "Tonight was important." Claire gave a small, disappointed smile. "I know." She looked at him carefully. "That is why it matters." Daniel seemed ready to argue, but stopped. Because somewhere in that moment, he realized Claire was not fighting for his attention. She was not asking him to choose her. She was simply recognizing that he had already made a choice. Claire turned back to Olivia. "Please make sure the staff knows everything is handled." Olivia nodded. Daniel watched as Claire walked away, returning to the work she had always done. The same work he had spent years benefiting from without truly seeing. Vanessa approached him quietly. "Are we leaving?" Daniel looked toward Claire's office door, closing in the distance. For the first time that night, he was not thinking about the dinner that was canceled. He was thinking about why Claire looked so calm, and why that calm bothered him more than anger ever could. The next morning, Bennett House opened exactly as it always did. The same warm lights turned on before sunrise. The same kitchen team prepared fresh ingredients. The same servers carefully arranged each table before the first guests arrived. To anyone walking through the front doors, nothing looked different. But Claire felt the weight of everything that had changed. She sat in her office reviewing the previous night's reports when Olivia placed a folder on her desk. "You should probably see this," Olivia said. Claire looked up. "What is it?" "The private dinner reservation details." Claire frowned slightly. "Why?" Olivia hesitated. "Because I noticed something strange." Claire opened the folder. Inside were the booking notes, payment information, and special requests connected to Daniel's reservation. At first glance, it looked like a normal VIP booking. Expensive wine, custom menu, private room. But then Claire noticed something she had missed before. The payment account attached to the reservation was not Daniel's personal account. It was connected to one of the restaurant's corporate expense profiles. Claire stared at the document. "That account is for business events." Olivia nodded. "Exactly." Claire looked through the pages again. "Who approved this?" "That is what I was trying to figure out." Olivia pointed to the bottom of the form. "There is an authorization code, but it does not match our usual system." Claire leaned closer. The details suddenly felt different. This was no longer just a husband hiding a dinner. Someone had used the reputation and resources of her restaurant to arrange something without proper approval. Daniel never had access to this system, Claire said quietly. Olivia looked at her. "Are you sure?" Claire paused. Years ago, she had trusted Daniel with many parts of her life. When Bennett House started growing, he helped with contracts, meetings, and introductions. She never questioned his involvement because she believed they were partners. But business was different from marriage. And lately, she was realizing how often she had confused the two. "I gave him access to some information years ago," Claire admitted. "But not this." Olivia placed the folder back on the desk. Then someone changed something. Claire looked toward the restaurant floor through the glass wall of her office. She saw employees preparing for lunch service. She saw the place she had protected through difficult years. The thought that someone could casually use it for something dishonest bothered her more than the dinner itself. Later that afternoon, Daniel showed up at Bennett House without calling first. Claire noticed him through the window as he entered. He looked different from the night before. Less confident. Less certain. "Claire," he said when she stepped into the lobby. "We need to talk." She remained standing. "About what?" Daniel glanced around. "About what happened." Claire folded her arms. "You mean the dinner you booked without telling me?" He ignored the question. "You embarrassed me in front of someone." Claire looked at him carefully. "That is what you are upset about." Daniel opened his mouth, but no answer came. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his expression changed. "I have to take this." He stepped away, but Claire caught a few words before he moved farther. "No, that account should have been approved." A pause. "What do you mean the ownership records do not match?" Claire watched him carefully. Ownership records. Those two words stayed in her mind. Because suddenly, this was no longer only about a secret dinner. Something much bigger had been hidden inside the paperwork of her own restaurant. And Claire realized she might not be the only person who needed answers. Claire spent the next hour reviewing documents she had seen hundreds of times before. Contracts, vendor agreements, partnership records, financial reports. Nothing looked unusual at first. That was the most unsettling part. The problem was not hidden in something obvious. It was buried inside details that most people would never question. Details Claire had always trusted Daniel to handle. Olivia sat across from her desk, scrolling through the reservation system. "I checked the access logs," she said. The account used to create the booking was connected to someone who had administrative privileges. Claire looked up. "Daniel?" Olivia shook her head. "No, not directly." She turned the laptop toward Claire. "That is why this is strange." Claire studied the screen. The account belonged to a consulting profile that had been created years earlier. A profile used for business partnerships and outside negotiations. "Who created this?" Claire asked. Olivia looked uncomfortable. "I found the name attached to the original setup." She paused. It was Daniel's assistant at the time. Claire leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she said nothing. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but not a complete one. Daniel had not simply walked in and booked a private dinner. Someone had made it possible for him to use resources connected to the restaurant. Someone had opened a door that should have stayed closed. "Why would he need this?" Olivia asked. Claire looked down at the paperwork. "That is what I need to know." Later that afternoon, Daniel returned. This time, he did not walk in like someone demanding an explanation. He walked in like someone trying to fix a problem before it became public. "Claire," he said, "I need you to listen to me." She continued organizing documents on her desk. "I am listening." Daniel took a breath. The reservation situation got out of hand. Claire looked at him. "The reservation situation?" "Yes." He lowered his voice. "I never wanted it to become this." Claire watched him carefully. "Become what?" Daniel hesitated. "A conflict between us." She almost laughed, but stopped herself. "Daniel, this is not about a dinner reservation anymore." He looked away. "I know." That answer caught her attention. "You know?" Daniel realized his mistake and quickly changed direction. I know you are upset." Claire stood up and walked toward the window overlooking the restaurant. "Do you remember when we first opened this place?" she asked. Daniel was quiet. "You told me nobody would ever understand what it took to build this." "I remember. I believed you did." She turned back toward him. "But now I am not sure you understood it either." Daniel's expression softened for a moment. "Claire, I never stopped believing in you." She looked at him. "Maybe not. But you stopped respecting what I built." Before Daniel could answer, his phone rang again. He checked the screen and immediately stepped away. This time, Claire noticed the concern on his face. Not irritation. Not frustration. Concern. "What happened?" Daniel asked into the phone. A pause followed. "No, that cannot be right." Another pause. The ownership documents were already reviewed. Claire stood still. Ownership documents. Again, Daniel ended the call and looked back at her. For the first time, he seemed unsure. "There is something you need to know," he said. Claire waited. "A company partner is questioning some old records connected to Bennett House." "What records?" Daniel looked at the floor. "The ownership structure." The words settled between them. Claire had spent years believing she knew exactly what she owned, what she built, and what she controlled. But now a question appeared that she could not ignore. If Daniel was worried about the ownership records, what exactly had he known about her restaurant that she had never been told? Claire had spent years believing the most important things in her life were built on trust. The restaurant, her marriage, the partnership she thought she shared with Daniel. But now, sitting alone in her office with old records spread across her desk, she started to wonder if trust had made her ignore things she should have questioned. Olivia placed another folder beside her. I found something else. Claire looked up. What is it? Olivia opened the folder carefully. The original ownership documents from when Bennett House was created. Claire scanned the first page. Her name was there. The business name was there. Everything looked familiar. Then she turned the page. Her expression changed. What is this? Olivia pointed to a section near the bottom. A secondary agreement. Claire read it slowly. The document showed that years earlier, a business structure had been created around the restaurant. It was supposed to protect the company during growth and expansion. But there was one problem. The person who handled the paperwork had listed Daniel as the primary contact for certain negotiations. Claire looked at Olivia. I never approved him to represent me that way. Olivia nodded. That is what concerns me. Claire closed the folder. She remembered those years. She remembered how overwhelmed she had been. The restaurant was growing quickly. Investors wanted meetings. Vendors wanted contracts. There were endless decisions every day. Daniel had offered to help. He told her she needed someone she trusted. And she trusted him. Maybe too much. Why would he hide this? Olivia asked. Claire did not answer immediately. Because the hardest part was not wondering if Daniel had made a mistake. It was wondering if he had made choices without telling her. Before Claire could say anything, Daniel walked into the office. This time, he did not wait outside. He looked serious. Claire, we need to talk. Olivia stood up. I will give you two a minute. After she left, Daniel closed the door. I know you found the documents. Claire looked at him. So you knew about them. Daniel was silent. That silence told her more than an explanation could. How long? She asked. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Claire, how long did you know? He took a breath. Since we started expanding. Claire stared at him. And you never told me? I was handling things. Claire shook her head. No. You were making decisions about my business without me knowing. Daniel stepped closer but stopped when he saw her expression. I was trying to protect what we built. What we built, Claire repeated. Daniel, you keep saying that. But every time you say it, you mean something different. He looked frustrated. You are acting like I stole something from you. Claire stayed quiet for a moment. Then she answered softly. I am acting like I am finally seeing what happened. Daniel looked away. He knew the conversation was no longer about a dinner. It was about years of choices that had been made while Claire believed they were making them together. There is more, Daniel finally said. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. More what? He hesitated. There is a meeting tomorrow with the investors. Why? Because they want clarification about the company structure. Claire looked at the documents again. A strange calm came over her. Not because everything was solved. It was because she finally understood that the questions she had been asking were not small questions. They were connected to something much larger. The next morning, she would walk into that meeting not as Daniel's wife, not as someone standing behind him, but as the person whose name was on the foundation of everything. But before she could prepare, Daniel received another message that changed the situation completely. The investors were not just asking for clarification. They had requested to meet the person who truly controlled Bennett House. The investor meeting started at 9 in the morning. Claire arrived early, not because she was nervous, but because she wanted to remember something important. Before the world knew Bennett House as a successful restaurant, before the awards, the reviews, and the long waiting lists, it was just an idea written in a notebook. A dream that only existed because one person refused to give up on it. She walked into the conference room carrying the original business records in a simple folder. Daniel was already there. For the first time in years, he did not look like the person who had all the answers. He looked like someone waiting to see what would happen next. A group of investors sat around the table. One of them looked at Claire and smiled. Mrs. Bennett, thank you for coming. Claire took her seat. Thank you for having me. The investor opened the meeting calmly. We reviewed the documents connected to Bennett House. There were some questions about communication history and decision authority. Claire glanced at Daniel. He looked down. She did not feel satisfaction seeing him uncomfortable. She simply felt clarity. I believe there were misunderstandings, Daniel finally said. Some decisions were made while we were both managing different responsibilities. Claire turned toward him. That is not the same as making decisions together. The room became quiet. It was not an accusation. It was a fact. For years, Claire had believed being a good partner meant trusting someone enough to share the weight. She never imagined that trust could also mean allowing someone else to speak for her. The investor looked through the documents. Mrs. Bennett, we need to confirm one thing. Do you still want to maintain full control of the restaurant group moving forward? Claire looked at the papers in front of her. She thought about the first night Bennett House opened. She thought about the empty tables, the uncertain future, and the countless moments when she wondered if the dream was worth the sacrifice. Then she thought about the night Daniel brought a private dinner into her restaurant and expected her to accept it without question. That was not the moment she lost trust. It was the moment she remembered her own value. Yes, Claire said. I do. The answer was simple, but it carried years of meaning. After the meeting, Daniel followed her outside. Claire. She stopped, but did not turn around immediately. I never wanted things to end like this, he said. She looked back at him. Neither did I. Daniel was quiet. Do you really think I never cared about you? Claire looked at him for a long moment. I think you cared about the version of me that made your life easier. He looked hurt by the words, but she continued. The woman who supported you. The woman who trusted you. The woman who never questioned you. Daniel lowered his eyes. Claire softened slightly. But marriage is not about having someone beside you who makes your life comfortable. It is about respecting the person standing beside you. She walked back toward Bennett House. Months later, the restaurant continued to grow. Claire expanded the menu, opened new locations, and built a team that understood what she had always believed. A business was not just walls, tables, and numbers. It was people. It was passion. It was the courage to protect what mattered. Daniel eventually understood the lesson too late. He had spent so much time believing Claire needed him to help build her world that he forgot she was the person who created it. And Claire learned something she carried with her forever. Trust is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone. But never give away your own voice while trusting another person. Because the people who truly value you will never need you to become smaller so they can feel bigger.